Hey fabricators, welcome back. My name is Craig and this channel is all about Microsoft Fabric in the real world. What works, what doesn't, and our take on news and features as they land. If that sounds useful to you, then don't forget to like and subscribe at the end of the video to stay up to date, and it really helps us out as well. So today I'm going to talk about cost control in Fabric. And what that really means is we're talking about pausing and resuming your Fabric capacities. So this has been done many times before over the years. If you search this on Google or any other search engine, you're going to get quite a lot of blogs and different ways of doing things. And I'll add some of those ones related to the ways that we're talking about today in the description if you want to follow their instructions as well. But we'll start by looking at the main options that you have and the different ways that you can pause and resume your capacity, and where there might be some pros and cons with each of those different ways. And then we'll move into a demo of the quickest and easiest way that you can get up and running so that you can prevent any of those 3 a.m. wake ups where you think you've left your Fabric capacity on when you've been playing with that F64. We're here to prevent that. So let's jump over and have a look at comparison between the 3 different ways that you can do it. So the main ways that you can approach this is we have Azure Automation, we have Azure Data Factory as an option, and we have Logic Apps. Now, these different ways, there are certainly other ways you can interact with the capacities that you want to update, but these are the main kind of options that you have, and all of these use the REST API within Fabric to do that pause and resume action. So the first one that we want to look at is Azure Automation, and with that option there's a couple of things to bear in mind. So that's using PowerShell. There is an option to use Python as well, and this is actually the one I'm going to demo because it is one of the simplest ones to set up. So we can have a look at what that looks like. There is a PowerShell script that's pre-created and a Python script that's pre-created, so you can use them, or if you are well versed in either of those languages, you could start to get a bit more inventive on how you implement this, some try-catches that you can implement as well. That is an Azure resource that you're setting up, so you're going to have to create that Azure Automation account. You're going to have to create the runbooks for this, so you just need to make sure that you've considered that, and that is permissions that you have access to do. The next one is Azure Data Factory. So this is using the Web API activity, and it's staying within data tooling. So this is a good option if you already have an Azure Data Factory established. It's just a case of creating a new pipeline. You're not having to provision new Azure infrastructure. You're not potentially updating any infrastructure as code that you might have in place, or getting elevated permissions to create new resources. It is obviously an Azure resource itself, so it's something to bear in mind if you are entirely within Fabric. There is a way to do this inside Fabric using the data pipelines, but I wouldn't say it's the most reliable option, because obviously you're using that Fabric capacity to run the pipeline, and then you're turning off that same capacity, or potentially you're turning off other capacities if you run this in a production environment. So you just need to be careful you're not turning this off and then you don't have the capability to automate the resume or any other sort of actions that you want to do on that capacity. And it is a bit of a low-code option, so it's nice and easy. You don't need to know PowerShell or Python to do this. The final option is Logic Apps, and that's quite similar to Power Automate. Again, it is an Azure resource, so you'd have to create that Logic app, and it is a bit of a low-code option as well, where you're basically just running through a set of actions of do this, and then depending on the output you can do different things as well. This is a little bit difficult around a syntax sort of way to get implemented, so there's a great guide on how to do that that I can provide in the comments as well, but that's just something to bear in mind. In terms of costs, we have pretty standard or pretty similar costs across all of those options. The Azure Automation is free, but bear in mind there is an asterisk attached to that. So Azure Automation runs jobs are free up to a certain point. Your first 5,000 are free, I believe, and I'll put a link to the documentation for that in the description as well. Azure Data Factory, it's just going to be the cost of the running that pipeline alongside any other pipelines that you might have in place. And Logic Apps follows the similar kind of billing cycle to your Azure automation. So that's the three main options that you have, and as I said, there's other ways to do this. At the end of the day, you're interacting with a REST API, so if you wanted to just roll something yourself, then that's something that you could do. But the main problem we're trying to solve here is the fact that your fabric capacity doesn't work like a Spark cluster, for example. It's not going to automatically pause when you're not using it. It doesn't have any built-in features that mean that you can automatically turn it off and on at different times. And for a production environment, that might be okay. You might have this on 24/7 for production. You might be using reserved CUs so that you can actually just run things and not really worry about the cost as much if you're not doing pay-as-you-go. But certainly in my situation, where me and Johnny are testing new things out, playing with new features, it's very easy to leave things on and not remember to turn off the capacity and run up a large bill. If you ever see me at an event, ask me about my £3,000 bill from Synapse dedicated pools, but that's a story for another time. So if you have a dev environment or a test environment, you're probably in a similar situation. You're maybe using it part of the day, but not the rest of the day, or just during a kind of standard 9 to 5 as well. So that's what we're going to demo here. So let's jump over to Azure and we can show you how this is set up. Okay, so we're in Azure and I already have a resource group set up. We have the Hey Fabricators capacity in there as well, and I've got another data factory testing out the other option that we have there as well. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create an Azure automation account if you've not already got one created. So we can hit the standard kind of create button here, and I will just search Azure automation account. And we've got this automation here. Click create, and this is where we can create it. So I'm using my subscription, putting it in the same resource group. I'm going to just name it A for Azure Automation, HF for Hey Fabricators, and we'll just do capacity and call it that. I'm going to put this in UK South because that's where everything else is. Go to next. We're going to use a system assigned managed identity so that that's taken care of. We don't need to worry about that. Hit next. If you've got any networking connectivity requirements, then you want to set them up here. And this is one of the things that I mentioned around setting up additional Azure resources. If you've got things wrapped up in virtual networks and subnets as well, it's something worth considering that there's probably some additional hoops you need to jump through to get this up and running. Hit next as well. Don't really need any tags in here unless you use them. And again, if you're setting this up with infrastructure as code like Terraform or Bicep or something, then these are probably already set up for you. And then I'll hit create. So that's going to deploy it to the resource group. While that's deploying, what I'm going to do is we need to go in and actually set up the permissions in here. So I need to set up the right permissions so that the Azure automation account, and when we're running that PowerShell script, it can actually do things to the fabric capacity. So the easiest way to do it, and again, you might have more granular access requirements, is coming into role, adding a new role assignment. Just going to set this up as an administrator role, and I'm going to set it up as a contributor to this resource group. And under members, we're going to select managed identity, and then I'll select the member. And under managed identity, I'm just going to do all system assigned managed identities, so I don't really need to look anywhere. And I've got my AA HF capacity one, so it's there for me already. Select, and then I'm going to do next, don't need to do anything else, and review and assign. So that's nice and easy. That's me added the permissions. I can go back to my resource group, and I can see it's created a couple of runbooks in here that are tutorial ones. I can bin them off when I go into the Azure Automation account. So jumping in here. So this is our Azure Automation account. If I go under Process Automation on the left-hand side, I can come to Runbooks, and this is where I'll see the tutorial runbooks that have been created. And what I want to do is I can either hit Import a runbook or just browse the gallery. If I go to Import a runbook, I can see in here I can browse from the gallery as well. And this is where, if I just type in Fabric, I can see there are two options that are already created. So we've got a PowerShell option and we've got a Python option. For simplicity, I'm just going to choose the PowerShell option. And we've got the PowerShell script here. So this is where you need like a rough understanding of how PowerShell works and what it's doing, so that you're not deploying code that you don't know anything about or what it's actually doing. So I'll select this to use it. I'm going to change the runbook name to pause. It helps if I can spell pause. Pause resume capacity. I'm going to leave this as 7.2, kind of recommended version, and it's already got a description in there for me. Hit import. So yeah, this is the PowerShell script, and we've got full details of what's actually happening here. We've got the parameters that we want to pass to it. There's commented out sections of parameters of what it's maybe expecting. We've got the URL that we're building out, and then we're basically passing the token to do the authentication, and then we're calling the API that we need to do. So it's fairly basic. There's not a lot happening in here. It's either doing a pause operation or it's doing a resume. There's no other try catch. There's no other kind of logic to it. That's all it's doing. Just through a little bit of a bug in the background with this, because it's a pre-created script and I've not actually done anything to edit it. I'm just going to put in a space there so it allows me to save that. And you can add anything else in if you want to change some of the comments. There's someone's resource ID in here, so actually it's probably a good idea if I remove that. Hit save, and then we're going to hit publish. And that's going to publish over the previous version. It'll take us back to the main screen, and then I can hit refresh in here. And it allows me to start it, so I can actually just run it. I can pass it the parameters that I need to pass it, and I can run it and see how it works. But what I'm going to do is I will go back to our resource group, and if I go into my capacity, so hey fabricators, and I'm going to come into my properties. I need to grab the resource ID. So I'll grab that from here, and then we're going to go back into the Azure Automation account. So I've grabbed the resource ID, and this is because we need to call a specific resource ID. So there are other ways that we can build this. There are ways, if you're using the data factory example, we could have a table that has all of your capacities named, and maybe you've got the resource IDs for them as well, or maybe we just use the names. You can have schedules and things like that built in there, so we can actually run a data factory pipeline to pause or resume your capacity based on this metadata that's stored somewhere else. But as I said, this is the quickest, this is the easiest way to do it, and I have one capacity I need to worry about in this scenario. So in here, I'm going to go to the runbook, and I can see that I've got this pause resume capacity in here, so it is ready to go. If I come back to the details of that runbook, so if I go in and have a look at it, I can then link to schedule. So that allows me to attach it to a schedule so that I can actually time what's going to happen here. So there's no schedule found, so I'm going to create a new one. And this is the kind of thing that you can start to build up more granular details of the schedule if you want it turned on at a specific time for people coming in at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And then turning off at 5, and maybe you've got people that work a bit later and you want a secondary schedule that's going to try and make sure everything's turned off by 7, 8 p.m. at night. so you don't get someone that's maybe working past 5 o'clock, they've turned the capacity back on, and then it's forgotten about the rest of the night. So we'll do 5 p.m. finish, and we're going to change that to 1700. It doesn't like that. And we're going to be recurring, and I'm going to run that every day with no expiration. So that's set up as the schedule, and I can add multiple schedules in there if I want. In terms of parameters and run requirements, we've got the resource ID, so I'm going to paste that in there, and the operation will be suspend. And then I'm clicking OK. And that's that set up, but is it actually running? There's no real way to tell. So I've got back to my capacity. It's currently off, so I'm going to turn this on, just so we can see it actually working, that it's actually doing something. And then go back to that specific runbook inside my Azure automation account, and I'm going to hit start. And it's going to ask me for the same parameters, so I'm going to put the resource ID in there, and I'm going to type in suspend for the operation type. So this is me running it ad hoc, which you can do at any point, and you can pass that either the suspend or the resume. It's queued at the moment, so if I hit refresh, just giving that a minute to run, and what that's going to do is it's going to basically just fire off that API call. It's not checking if it's running at the moment, which is a key thing to bear in mind. So it's not checking if the capacity is running, it's basically just executing that API call to suspend it. So we've got it starting. We've got no errors coming through yet. And that's it running. It should be fairly quick to run. And that's it completed. So we look at errors, there's no errors. It's a little bit of output. If I jump back to our resource group and go to our capacity, and that's it turned off. So that's the script in motion, basically. If I go back and I rerun this again, this gives you an opportunity to see that actually there's no real logic or intelligence in this script as it is, and that's not saying that you can't actually add that in if you know your way around PowerShell. But if we add the resource group in again, and I type in suspend and I run that capacity is already turned off, and this will still execute the same API call, but you'll just get an error coming back saying that actually this is done, there's nothing we can do here. There's an output error that's going to happen as part of that. So if you're handling errors out of your Azure automation account and out of these runbooks, you're potentially going to get these errors coming out. And in the method of doing this within Azure Data Factory, you're going to have the same issue if you're calling that API call initially, and then you get the error, but you can handle that specific error and pass it into another action to say, yeah, if it's this specific error, then do nothing, don't worry about it. If it's anything else, then we want that spat out, we want that sent somewhere else. Or potentially your first API call is to see what state the capacity is in for this specific capacity, and then depending on the output from that state, you want to suspend it, or you want to do nothing, or potentially you want to scale it back down. So there's a lot more logic that you can add into that to control what's actually happening. So if we come to errors, you can see response status code does not indicate success 400 bad request because it's already suspended. So that is a very quick and easy way to get your capacity to automatically pause and potentially resume at specific intervals. Hopefully, like me, that's going to save you some money, certainly in the short term, and potentially this is something that we can keep an eye on within Fabric to see if there's going to be better ways implemented to actually handle that. Now, if you're using this in a pay-as-you-go capacity, you're paying a little bit higher than you would with reserved instances or reserved capacity. But if you are going down a reserved capacity route, it's going to be slightly cheaper, but also the benefits of actually pausing your capacities starts to negate where you're just throwing money away by pausing and turning on your capacities again. There's some other caveats that you need to think about if you're pausing and resuming your capacities, especially if you've kind of used a little bit over your capacity for that day, but that's certainly a video for another time. So thank you very much for listening, and see you on the next one.